Hello, Colts Nation, and what is up, No Horse and family? Welcome back to an episode of the No Horse Around podcast, family time, live stream edition, all that great things. As always, you guys know we are powered by WagerWire, our incredible sponsor. Revolutionary, one-of-a-kind app. Get in and out of the future bets, which is really cool. Get in and out of parlays, which blows my mind. You know, you have a 14 parlay, and you can be getting ready to bust on one. You can actually get out of it. They got an app coming really, really soon. In fact, we're actually going to have later, closer to the draft, we're going to have one of the creators of that on to talk to you guys a little bit about WagerWire and what you can do. Go to the website, wagerwire.com. Plug in your email address. You'll get notified. You can also follow them on Twitter at WagerWire. So we got a lot to talk about. My boy Zach's under the weather, but we are really excited because we have the incomparable and the all-knowing Landon, who's joined us today from the Blue Stable. Landon, thanks for jumping in, man.
Yeah, thank you. That's a heck of a opening to live up to. Incomparable, all-knowing. I wouldn't describe myself as any of those two things, but I appreciate the kind words, and I'm excited to talk some Colts football with you tonight.
Yeah, I mean, and we got a lot of good stuff. I'm sitting here going, man, I think everybody, I feel like the No Horsing Around family and Colts Nation is ready to talk because we've just gone live on this and the comments are already blowing up. I mean, they're already coming in with questions about rookie quarterbacks and veteran quarterbacks and what we think of Ballard. And we're going to get to all that, you guys. So let's kind of start off with Ballard's approach this offseason, right? Like, what do we think? Has he varied enough? Has he varied any from what you think that he's done in years past? I'm going to let you go first, Landon, on what you think of. Is he operating? You know, something that someone mentioned to me is, does he look like he's operating as a guy who has his job on the line, or does he look like he's just kind of operating as usual?
As far as like operating with his job on the line, I don't necessarily think it's like that urgent just because, he was given the opportunity to come back to choose a head coach, to choose a rookie quarterback, as we all anticipate. So to me, that gives you a little bit of a leash. You're looking more of like at least 2 to 3 years. So I don't think this is like the make or break, free agency period for him. Now the draft, that will be make or break for him. But the free agency period, I don't necessarily think is. I do think that he's kind of went out of his way a little bit to make some moves as opposed to waiting for that second and third wave. But I think also that has to do with this free agency class. So this class is not as high powered with those big name guys that you saw the last couple years. And so really, like, I mean, your highest paid wide receivers right now are averaging, 11 million. There's not, we just signed a pass rusher, for 9 million APV. So, I mean, you're not getting these huge, 18, $20 million contracts that are getting handed out on the first day of free agency. This is a lot more conducive to the class of free agent that he likes to, to go after. So getting these high upside, really athletic players on, really good deals. I will say it has been a little odd that he's not front loading a lot of these deals for cap space because that's normally his MO. So it seems like they're kind of getting a little bit of cap relief in these deals. And that's kind of been like the big change is the way that these deals are structured that they're handing out. It's saving a lot of cap space this year as opposed to kind of structuring it to where the cap hits are a little bit bigger and then it tails off towards the end of the contract. But, even then, a lot of these deals, they have outs after, 2-3 years. He just, the defensive tackle we signed was a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't really think he's being extremely aggressive. I do think in the kicker situation he was, though, because I think in his entire tenure, we were on the last legs of Adam Vinatieri, and the kicker position has just been a thorn in this team's side basically since he's taken over this job.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think this was kind of his thing. It's like, look, I'm tired of dealing with this. We're going to go out. We're going to get the best one on the market. We're going to give him the deal that he's asking for that we think he deserves. And, this is hopefully you sign a guy like Matt Gay. You hope to not worry about the kicker position for the next 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think you hit on the most poignant part, right? Which is two different things. One, it does really line up to the kind of players he likes. The class is not full of these high-powered, high-flying free agents, right? Like there's just not a lot of maybe the better word would be star power, right? Like there's not a lot of
Right.
cachet star power that's coming in. And then I think you pointed it out, and I've seen a couple other people point out the way he's divvying out the contracts. He's doing less of these 1 year deals, front, like you said, front loaded, and he's doing more. He gave out a 3 year contract. He's given out a 4 year contract, and I had someone send it. I saw it on Twitter that they said to is it also looks like the way he's going about it too is structured with the idea that you're going to have a rookie quarterback. You're going to have that salary cap relief because you're not going to pay him, you know, $35 million a year like you've been doing with Matt Ryan. And so I think that's changed. I will say it was an odd surprise for me to actually see Colts news on the first day of free agency. I don't think anybody was expecting that. And keep your ears out. We'll tell everyone in the chat, keep your ears up because apparently around this time, the last 2 nights is when they've pulled some moves and signed some people. So if you happen to see it before we do, drop it in the chat. And we'll talk.
Yeah, I was gonna say we were live last night, whenever the Ebukam news broke. So, you never know. It's usually whenever I'm busy doing stuff, don't really have time to check my phone too much. That's when things are kind of popping off. So, you never know what you're gonna get.
It's just you don't. It's crazy. I mean, I feel like they break in the middle of the night too. It's not as bad as like the NBA with like Kevin Durant broke at 1 o'clock in the morning, but it's still crazy. I'm gonna go through some of these comments and then we'll touch on some of this too. Sarah, hey Sarah, thanks for dropping in. Drake and everyone. I'm excited for the Colts' future, and I love Sampson and Gay signings along with bringing back Doolin and EJ Speed. I couldn't agree more. I think. And so I'm going to piggyback her with this because we got a couple of questions, and I want to get your opinion on this. We're going to kind of swing into this portion. We got Nathan dropping in here saying, I want to bring in a veteran quarterback. I'm going to piggyback with what Sarah says here, which is she likes Minshew. She actually likes Samola. But let's focus on the veteran side of the quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know, I think everyone knows the Colts are taking a quarterback at 4, right? We don't know who it's going to be because we have no clue if someone's going to jump them at 3, which we can always have a fun discussion about that and see what we think. But let's just say no one does. We know they're going to take one of 2 people. I'm barring something, it's going to be Richardson or it's going to be Levis. So the need for a veteran quarterback, we did just cut Matt Ryan. I think everyone's just waiting for Nick Foles to get cut as well or released. Where do you sit? We've seen Andy Dalton go. We've seen Jameis Winston go. Who else? We saw someone else. I'm trying to think. There was another one. Oh man,
I was going to say there's been quite a few guys. Let me pull it up here. We can go through. Who?
Because I know we've got a couple like Mariota's still out there. I know that's there.
Jacoby Brissett just signed earlier.
Who did?
Jacoby Brissett.
Jacoby signed with the Commanders. That's one. So I mean, of the names that are out there, who do you like? Who do you think would be a good one to bring in? And here I'm going to piggyback because you got a ton of knowledge when it comes to the quarterbacks in the draft. And I'll say again, for anybody who hasn't, go check out anything Landon does in regards to the draft. He does amazing breakdowns. And if you hate Will Levis, go to Landon's feed because he breaks down some really good points of why I think he could be a good quarterback. And I agree with him. But I know it depends probably on who you're taking. But who out there in the veteran quarterback market do you prefer?
Yeah, so just some names that are available. At the top of the list, we have Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan. So I'm sure Colts fans are not going to go for that one. And so some more of the realistic names here. We got Marcus Mariota, Teddy Bridgewater available, Chase Daniel, Nathan Peterman, Philip Walker, of course, is available, a name that guys are kind of familiar with. Gardner Minshew. So those kind of would be the guys that I would target, to an extent. I believe John Wolford is also available for the Rams. He had some pretty good showings there in Los Angeles whenever he played, so that could be a name. But really, for me, it comes down to two guys, and I think both of these guys would be really good for the type of offense they could run with the rookie they end up drafting either way, and that's Gardner Minshew and Philip Walker. I would love to see PJ back, and especially if you draft a guy like Richardson, you could really, and Tyler Huntley is also a name now. Since they did not tender him, they didn't give him like an exclusive tender, so they do have a chance to match whatever offer Tyler Huntley. The Ravens, if you didn't know, the Ravens can match whatever offer he gets, but it would not cost the team a draft pick to sign him. So that would be a name as well that would really be interesting to me. So yeah, like I said, PJ, um, Gardner Minshew, Tyler Huntley, those type of guys that you could really run a similar offense around a guy like Richardson or Levis with, and you wouldn't necessarily have to consistently switch it up, for changing, because we all saw what happened this year whenever they went from Matt Ryan to
Mhm.
Sam Ellinger to Nick Foles. I mean, they were having to change the offense almost on a weekly basis there for about 5 weeks. So that's kind of what you want to avoid. So if you have a guy that has a similar play style to the guy that you've drafted, you're able to kind of condense the offense, and there's not going to be that much change from what you're running. So it gives them a chance to practice the same type of plays. Everything's just more continuity. And that's what you need for a young guy. You need continuity. So for me, a guy that I would look heavy into, especially if you're going to want to set and have that rookie quarterback not play for the majority of this year, which depending on who it is, we don't know what their plan is. But to me, that would either be a guy like Gardner Minshew or Tyler Huntley would be the guys I would be interested in, because I think they can come in, give you some really valuable play at quarterback position, kind of keep you afloat. Because I think we're all in agreement the Colts are probably not competing in 2023 in the AFC, especially with the Aaron Rodgers news that dropped today. That's just one more franchise quarterback in the AFC, which is just chocked full of great quarterbacks now. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think we're under the impression they're competing in the AFC this season. So it kind of bodes well to have a guy set for a little while, learn the offense, get a little more comfortable, refine his mechanics with the quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator, and then kind of take over, similar to how Patrick Mahomes, kind of took over there in Kansas City. And I think both Tyler Huntley and Gardner Minshew could come in and give you some really good play from that quarterback position. And I don't know if it would necessarily translate to wins, but it wouldn't be awful to watch.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about the Tyler Huntley one. I like that one a lot. Although I will say, wouldn't it be funny that da 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 Colts agree to a quarterback from the Ravens dot 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 Tyler Huntley?
Tyler Huntley, yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Because that's
Yeah,
literally in the chat too. We're
yeah, you
hearing a
want to
ton
talk
of
about
scuttle about Lamar.
you want to talk about Twitter exploding when that
Well,
happened.
it would be like, who was it? Was it Schefter that did like a? Who was it? It was someone trades for. Oh, what did he say? It was like the Jets make a trade for such and such from the
It
Packers,
was
but it was
Rappaport.
like a DB.
It was Rappaport.
I mean, it was like, oh, but I mean, no, I like that one. We've heard a ton of Gardner. That's one, and I think that would be a fun watch if you're looking to sit. And that's ultimately the question, right? Like, are you looking to sit him? Are you looking to play them immediately? Are you looking to ease them in eventually? Like, what is the plan with the rookie that you get? And I think a lot depends on the rookie that you do get. Um, so I mean, Mariota's a name that's been tossed out there before too. I don't know. I know we had a lot of interest in him last year, but at the same time, I think he's still living in the world that he thinks he's a starter, and I don't
Well,
know how that vibes with coming in here.
yeah. Well, my whole thing with Mariota is I've been a big fan of him. I've actually, met the guy, talked to him, really nice guy. But
Mhm.
what happened last year in Atlanta, whenever they did move on to Desmond Ritter, instead of him staying there on the sideline, supporting the rookie, supporting his teammate, he basically bailed on the team. Like, I mean, he just disappeared. They let him walk away. He wanted no part of that organization once he was benched. And I just don't know if that's really conducive to a good culture for a rookie to be in because,
Yeah.
they're drafting a guy at 4. He's going to take over at some point. If it's not this year, it's going to be next year for sure. So, if you're coming in with the grand illusion that, hey, I'm going to be the franchise quarterback here, and I mean, unless you're going out and you lead them to an AFC championship game or Super Bowl, or you throw 50 touchdowns, you're probably not going to be the franchise quarterback that the Colts sign. They're
Yeah.
drafting that guy. So if your first inkling of getting benched is, hey, I'm just going to leave the team, I don't want anything to do with the team, that's probably not a guy that I would want around. So that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And it's kind of weird too, because you listen to Ryan Tannehill and talk about Mariota in Tennessee and how helpful he was to Ryan
Mhm.
Tannehill and how supportive he was. Obviously I'm not in Atlanta. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but it was just it was an odd situation to see him walk away from that organization as soon as they inserted Desmond Ritter.
Yeah, I mean that it was a very. I mean, I know they tried to play it off a little bit with his wife was having a baby. He was going to do that, but it was really odd. And I mean, I live in Tennessee, so it's one of those things that you hear different things too, which is that he is. A lot of people think that he does fully think that he is still a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. That he went to Oakland, Las Vegas originally because he fully thought he would beat out Derek Carr, and he picked and choose. So, I mean, that's the interesting thing with him. I'm going to knock through some of these comments again. Unboxing Mania. How about them bags Jimmy is given early in free agency? I love it. And then I'm gonna point this out. This is Sheriff Adams. So we, for the first time, you guys, we are actually live on Twitch too. So anybody can go over there, check that out. This is one of my really good friends, one of my best friends, is watching us over there. So you guys can check that out. Zach, even though he's under the weather, chiming in, my guys. Zach, feel better, man. Some of the more happy with the offseason would really like to bring Paris and Rock back. Hopefully Reisner and Samolo can be signed. I want to get to the two at the top. So this is a good little segue, and then we'll kind of keep going through. But before I jump back up here, I'm going to give a shout out. Obviously, my boy Drake. Drake donating $4.99. And we're going to get to the question, Drake. I'm going to start. I'm going to ask this one. But I love you, man. I'll text you later, too. Back up here. So Paris and Rock, obviously a former co-host, co-worker, your Destin tweeted out from Horseshoe Huddle, obviously, that he had heard there's a lot of interest, obviously, from Carolina with Paris. There's a lot of interest in Paris in general. So I'd love to get your take on that as opposed to the wide receiver class. But I'd also the Rock part, right? Like Rock Yassin, I love Rock. I had a running bet for those who've been around long enough. I had a running bet with Zach 2 years ago that if he played at a Pro Bowl level, I was going to buy Zach a jersey and make him wear it. Obviously, it didn't happen, and they traded him, so Zach got out of it. But you kind of combine what took place when he left, and then I'm not going to lie, like the really odd supposed mistweet from Isaiah Rodgers today of like, let's get ready to rock, and then he tagged Rock in it, and he said it was like a mistake. I don't believe that really, but I want to get your take on kind of those two specifically. On would you want to bring Paris back? I know you're going to have a lot of competition, and do you want to bring Rock back?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have both of them. For sure, they're both really good players, talented players. So I'm never going to say no to adding talented players, but I'll say this, the Colts really like Ashton Doolin, and they really think that he can blossom into something. And that's kind of why he was prioritized. Plus, obviously he's an all-pro special teams player as well. So it really just comes down to contract with Paris, if he's willing to take a lesser contract and more of like a prove it deal for one more year. Which I don't know if it'd be 1 or 2 years. I mean, I'm just assuming, with the injury history, all of that, the big free agent deal, the $11 million deals that are getting handed out, he's probably not going to command that. So, is a team like Carolina who is desperate now for wide receiver help, are they willing to shell out that, 10 and a half, maybe $11 million a year just to bring him in because, Frank obviously pounded the table to draft him. That was Frank's guy, in that draft. So there obviously is a connection. So really it's just going to come down to contract. And like I think I know people hate this and they're going to hate it, but I really do think, the Chris Ballard, like, hey, we like our guys. I really do think they like this wide receiver. Like, they like this wide receiver room. And I think they targeted in the draft as opposed to signing more free agents, but they're really high on Alec Pierce. They think he can be special with the right quarterback. Obviously, like that's the most important part of this is getting the quarterback because they have talent in that wide receiver room. It's just getting a guy that can get them the ball consistently and make plays that's really going to determine how great this wide receiver room can be. Michael Pittman Jr., as we know, I think he's a great wide receiver. He just hasn't had the consistency at quarterback to show it. Alec Pierce, like I mentioned, and then they're really high on Ashton Doolin. And, you know, would I like to see them bring Paris back? For sure. But it's really just going to come down to money. And there's some teams out there that really, really need some wide receiver help that might be willing to offer him a little bit better of a deal than Indy would. So it'll be curious to watch for that. But I mean, I'm definitely not discounting it. It's just the signing of Ashton Doolin and some of the moves they've made as far as signing other positions, it just makes it a little bit harder to double dip in free agency at wide receiver, unless you're going for, like I said, more of a cheaper deal there. And as far as Rock, I would love to have Rock back. I think Chris Ballard is one of the biggest Rock Ya-Sin fans you can think of, and I know it really hurt him to make that deal with the Raiders last year, but I'm just interesting because Gus Bradley, he wanted his guy Yannick. Obviously, it cost them Rock Ya-Sin. We heard some, quotes from Rock, after the deal was made, about getting complacent in Indy and some of the culture, stuff. So I'm not quite sure he would be willing to come back and not only for a team that he basically kind of had some words for after he left. Like, I don't think it was anything egregious, but I mean, he definitely was not, you know, that fond of getting traded. But then on top of that, Gus Bradley's the one who pushed for the deal. So he would basically be coming back to play for the coach that pushed him out the door. So that's another kind of thing to think about. This is, I mean, I'm sure though, as we know, money fixes everything. Money will fix everything. And this is a huge, huge hole on this team now, is the cornerback position. Massive hole. Luckily, this is one of the best cornerback classes as far as depth and players go that I've seen in a long time. I mean, you're going to have guys going in the third and fourth round that in normal years they would be second rounders. And that's just because there's so many of these guys and they're all, they have length, they have athleticism. Like, I mean, it's such a good corner class. So I would really kind of see them bringing in somebody. I was a big fan of Isaiah Oliver. He just got signed by the 49ers. That kind of hurt my soul a little bit. I thought he would have been a great signing. But there's some other corners out there that are really, that can give you some valuable reps in this class. And it seems like they're just kind of pushing to get younger and getting a younger cornerback. I mean, Rock's only 26, but there's a few other guys, 26, 27 years old. They could throw out, a 2-year deal to double dip in the draft in this really talented cornerback class. And then that DB room can change very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said too with going back to with Paris. I'm actually a little surprised we haven't heard something, only because he was a little bit cryptic right before free agency. They've talked, so that's an interesting one. I agree with you. I agree last year. I agree last offseason. He really does. Ballard likes the receiver room a lot. And I think he trusts it. He's just got to get stable at the quarterback. Kind of some of these comments. Larry, I did see your one. We will talk about Lamar. We'll talk about kind of the scuttlebutt that's come up. He mentions that Rich Eisen was talking about it today. Wyatt, love you, Wyatt. Ballard has quietly solidified two areas, kicker and D line. Now expect him to focus on O line, corner, and vet quarterback. Corey.
See, there we go. Deal already. There we go. Tony Brown, special teams ace Tony Brown going back to the Colts for a 1-year deal.
There you go. See, it's always in the afternoons. Tony Brown to the Colts during the middle of the show, right?
Well, I believe he was re-signed. So, I mean, he was already on the Colts, but really good special teams player. Look, special teams coach in his first year, he's got some dogs out there. I mean, like, they are really bringing the special teams home this year.
Well, he seems very excited. That new special teams coach seems very, very excited to be in Indy. Coming from Notre Dame, but being from here, and he seemed very excited when I got to listen to him. A little bit more. We'll get unboxing any potential Steichen players that could possibly sign with the Colts. We'll touch on it. Tyrell, I know as always you do agree about what Corey said about Ballard, that he pays bench players that do terrible. I love you, Tyrell. You're always allowed to have your own opinion. You know that, man. So let's get to Drake's though. What would we grade Ballard's current performance in free agency? He's being aggressive in right ways and is filling several spots that need solidified. So what would you grade him? Grade him through the first what? 3 days?
First few days. I'd give him like a solid like B minus. I think he's solidified some really good spot. Like I said, especially on special teams, he's done a really good job on special teams, and that's going to be an important part. For Brian Mason as a first year special teams coach now in the NFL, like he's got a lot of guys to work with. So I think he solidified those spots. And then some of the other moves, pass rush. I really like the Samson Ebukam signing. I think that's an upgrade actually over Yannick for probably a little bit cheaper than what you would have been able to keep Yannick Ngakoue for. It seems like they're more signing. It's very similar to like the Danico Autry thing where, Danico Autry was kind of like an unknown guy, like, just playing in a rotational role. He comes to Indy and then really breaks out. And this is kind of a very similar signing. And then, of course, the defensive tackle from the Browns they signed earlier, he was actually a former first-round pick for Jacksonville. Super athletic guy, but he just hasn't put it all together. He's struggled against the run. I do think he's got some good pass rush, ability. So as a third or fourth, defensive tackle there, I think, he could give you some decent spots. And, it's only a 1-year deal. So we'll see what happens. Just kind of more of like a prove it deal, for him. And so, yeah, I mean, it's nothing earth shattering. So I can't really give it like an A or like a B plus or anything like that. It's just more of like average to me, but I think it's a little bit above average because I do like some of the guys that he signed. So that's why I'm kind of going like, the B minus range, because it's a little bit above a C. It's better than average, but it's not quite, there just yet. Now, if he goes out, gets a guy like, Snoop Huntley from the Ravens and then turns around and gets, Isaac Siamalu or, from the Eagles, that could turn into a really strong class of free agents. But for me, even in general, personally, I'm not a big free agency guy. So, you don't win games in March. You win games in the draft and you win games, during the season. So I've never really been one to dip heavy into free agency. I know it's exciting for fans. I know they love to see the big names signed and all the transactions and all that stuff. But, I just think it's just more of like solidifying depth on your roster, just getting some rotational guys or like a position of weakness, you're able to, if there's a guy out there where you can solidify that, kind of like the Matt Gay thing where they've struggled to find a kicker for a few years now. And, now they have one that I don't think whenever you trot him out on special teams, you're not going to be saying like, oh, is he going to make it? Is he going to miss? I mean, he more often than not, he's going to end up making.
It's funny you say that too, because that's what me and Zach were talking about yesterday. Just we were talking on the phone and said, for the last 2 years as Colts fans, you kind of watched through your fingers a little. Anytime that we had a kicker going out, for those who are a little upset about it, like do a little bit more digging too. This eliminates that. Like it should eliminate the worry when you have a guy trot in there for a 45-yard kick, or head from an extra point, because we've had issues with those too. So I mean, I think if to piggyback on you, I hate to say the same thing. I think it's a solid. It's right there in the middle. It's a B minus, B, right around there. Just because I would rate it higher. I like the players he's gotten, but also I like that he has done a little bit earlier. I would say if he made these same signings 3 days after today, people would be like, "Oh, same old Ballard," right? Because it would have been taking longer. So I think he heard some of it. He understood the need a little bit too, but at the same time, Ballard's not going to do what he's not going to cave to people's pressure. He's just never done that. So I'm right there in the middle. I'm a B.
That's one of the old scout and GM sayings is if you listen to the fans enough, you'll be sitting with them eventually. So.
Yes, this is the photo bomber. She's showing off. We had merchandise a long time ago. There's the shirt. Okay. Go. So the really quickly too, for anybody on here too, if you want to highlight your comment too, you can give too. You can support the channel. We talk about all the time. We got memberships, $1.99, $2.99, $4.99. You can drop a little bit too, keep the lights on, keep some cool cameras, stuff like that too. So kind of going through here too, I want to point out this right here. 141 JM, hi from New Zealand. God bless you. I don't know what time it is there, but thank you for tuning in. And we love the fact that we got some Colts fans out there. So let's it's heating up in the chat a little bit too with this talk. Let's kind of pivot a little. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson, right? And I think a lot of it is coming from, I'm going to give credit, if you want to say it that way, to Stephen Holder the other day. When we cut Matt Ryan and traded Stephon Gilmore, right? He tweets out curiously that the Colts are clearing cap space. I think a lot of people, I would disagree with this, looked at the move with Stephon Gilmore as clearing space. I look at it more of doing a solid to a veteran, putting him on a team. I think people had issue with it. And me and Zach talked about this too, is that the idea of the fifth round was the hard thing to kind of swallow. You probably thought you could get higher. It is I think it is a 32-year-old cornerback. So I get that. But there's been a lot of this because today's the first official day, I think at 4:00, that he is allowed to start talking to teams. And people are talking a lot about the Colts. We've talked about it. I know, I'm damn sure y'all have talked about it, but it's in the chat a lot. So let's kind of give the No Horse and Family and the people kind of what they want. Where do you sit on the idea of them? Like, I'll say this and then I'll let you go and then I'll kind of go more afterwards. I don't mind them checking in. I'm shocked that more teams aren't. I don't know where I sit with the idea of it, but I'm also pretty well known as a person who's not super high on Lamar Jackson. That's just me. I got in a ton of trouble with Ravens flock 2 years ago. I made a comment that he wasn't in the top 5, and they promptly flooded that video in the next 6 that we had with comments towards me about my stupidity. So I want to hear what you think, man. Would you give up 2 ones, and then let's just go with, do you actually think that it's a move that they're going to look at?
Would I give up 2 ones for Lamar? Absolutely. I wouldn't even think about that. Like, for sure. I mean, there's not, how many times do we have 26-year-old MVP quarterbacks that are available? To an extent, available. I mean, not very often. And I am really high on Lamar. I think he's a great player. Like he's one of, when any field he's on, he's one of the best players on the field. And he's plays the most important position in possibly all of sports. So he's just such a game changer. And, you know, I don't understand why more teams aren't checking in on him as well. Do I think the Colts need to at least make a phone call? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? No, not even remotely. Like it's not happening. It's it's something that we talked about last night on our show as well. There's just there's so many other factors at play. And really, I think Baltimore, they want another team to do the work for them. I mean, if they can get another team to offer a deal, I mean, they've already offered him tons of guaranteed money. It's just not what he's looking for. So, if they can get a team to do the work for them and all they have to do is say, like, hey, we'll just match it, and it takes all the work off of them. I mean, I don't anticipate, unless there's just something that we don't know behind the scenes happening there with that organization and Lamar Jackson, which could be the case. I just don't anticipate seeing him not wearing a Ravens jersey, but it's the NFL. Anything is possible. But do I think the Colts ultimately are the team that prize him away? No, I don't think so at all. I think they're very clearly geared toward, or with these moves, they're very clearly gearing up towards the future. And if you get Lamar Jackson, I mean, you're talking about you got to be competitive right away. I mean, he's going to be 27 years old. The style of football he plays, as we've seen the injuries kind of mount up over the last couple of years, that's a part of it. That's an unfortunate part of it. And as exciting as it would he be able to stay healthy? Because he's never played a full season in his career. And it's just kind of like a ticking time bomb, where is if you get a rookie quarterback, it provides you a little bit more time. Obviously 5 years of a rookie deal for a quarterback is, to me, the biggest advantage in football. If you hit on the quarterback, it can just do so much for your roster. And I just don't really see that really playing into where the Colts are headed. So yeah, I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think it's even a possibility they're going to do it, but I would at least make a phone call, because I mean, what's it going to hurt, But yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's just part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. So I think, and the chat seems Corey Lamar's too injury prone to give 2 1s up. He's only played 12 games each of the past 2 seasons. I get that. I think I read somewhere, it was an article. I wish I could give credit, but I can't remember who it was. It may have been Drake over at Horseshoe Huddle talking about could Steichen craft a system to keep him healthier, take less hits, obviously. And then you have the people who are drilling. Could you imagine Lamar with JT in the backfield? It is like, it's a scary idea. You got Lamar will save Ballard's job. If Young, Stroud, and Richardson go 1, 2, 3, Colts trade for Lamar at draft. I mean, you never know. And then Nomadic Brian, love him. I'd be surprised to see Lamar as the Colts quarterback. What you said, Landon, trends seem to be towards a rebuild. I think we're at number 4 and a rookie quarterback. I mean, I'm in agreement. I will say, I think the teams that have publicly come out and said they're not going after him, I think there are probably a couple in there that are actually going to. Like, I can't fathom the Falcons not, like, in some way, shape, or form. Like, I'm sorry. Are you worried you're going to piss off Desmond Ridder? Maybe it's just me, but I feel like that. I'm with you. I think that's the hesitancy a lot too, is that anything you offer, they're going to match more than likely, and that seems to be the consensus from everybody. I will say, I don't – money talks, like you said earlier when we were talking about Rock and Paris and things like that. I do think that it's gotten quite a bit more contentious than I thought. Seeing what's coming out, seeing that, you've got them leaking that he got offered $200 million fully guaranteed. You got him coming out saying it was only 133. Him talking about people throwing poop against the wall, hoping it sticks. And I do think a lot of this is, and he can say what he wants. He doesn't have an agent, and that makes things so much more difficult, I would think. But in the end, I really think even go from Ballard to Steichen to the staff in general on what they've built this staff to be, which is developing a young quarterback, to all the way up to Jim Irsay saying, "Hey, we like that kid from Alabama." That hot take, that hot piece of what he said,
Yeah,
but also just what he said
Will
earlier,
Anderson's a
which
good player,
was
man.
we're going to get a young guy. Like I think they want to get that guy. They want to get their guy, and they want to have him for the next 15 years.
Yeah. Well, and then I mean, like you look at the moves that are being made, and like some of the stuff that has leaked out. Obviously, with getting rid of Stephon Gilmore. Then you've got the Ryan Kelly stuff, the Kenny Moore stuff. There's a few other veterans I've heard that could be available as well. Mo Alley Cox, and there's some other names in there, but you don't get rid of those players if you're looking to bring in a Lamar Jackson and compete, right from the jump. And
Mhm.
that's what it would be. You bring him in, and you you would love to have a Stephon Gilmore. You would love to have, Ryan Kelly and Mo Alley Cox and, all these other guys who are a little bit more experienced than the youth movement we seem to be heading towards. And that's not saying, like Mo Alley Cox is just some like world beater, or Ryan Kelly hasn't had his struggles, or Kenny Moore hasn't struggled. But I mean, they're veteran players who have, at least in their career played at high levels. So, having those guys possibly on the trade block or possibly on the cutting block and getting a Lamar Jackson, they just don't really fit the same timeline.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, and that's something and this is coming through here too. So I'm interested. Let's touch on this with it. Is the idea of you know Kenny Moore. We know of Ryan Kelly. We know of Mo Alley Cox. We know that there's probably a handful of others they've made available. My standpoint, and I might be wrong, and I want to hear your take on it too, is that if you're leaking that you're making them available and you don't get a trade, they're high likely to be cut, I would think, and you're moving on. I will say, I think there, like I said, I think there's a handful of ones we don't know of, like you said. Like we didn't know Stephon Gilmore. The one that I feel, and me and Zach were talking about this, the one I feel keep an eye on, that if they moved him, then my whole talk about clearing cap space would be different because you'd be like, well, that's weird. Would be DeForest Buckner. He's one of the few on the roster that I feel is untouchable in regards to in a lot of people's eyes. And if for some reason they were to move him, my antennas would go up a little bit and wonder as to why.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you they're not moving DeForest Buckner. I mean, people have called about DeForest Buckner multiple times now, and every time they just get hung up on. I mean, it would have to take a just absolutely godfather offer for them to even consider it. And so far, they haven't gotten that. So DeForest Buckner is not on the trade block. He's not getting moved. It's not something that they're thinking about. And
Well, didn't Ballard even say at the end of the presser, at the end of the year presser, if I could have 11 of him, we would be doing
yeah,
pretty well.
yeah,
Like he is beloved. And can I just point out too? I'm gonna let you go with this too. Is that the compensation that gets floated out for him blows my mind. That people are like, "Oh yeah, throw him a 4." Are you serious?
yeah,
Like you start seeing the people think that that's what he's. It's like no, it starts at a 1. If someone were to call and offer a 1, you might listen. But I'm in a 100% agreement with you. I don't think he's going anywhere. It is interesting. I mean, people wouldn't be doing their due diligence if they weren't calling because the Colts have
right.
traded some people. So, but yeah, I'd be stunned. That's why I said if they did it, I would start to very much wonder what is happening.
Yeah, yeah. It's not something that I can even see possibly happening. Like I could see them signing Lamar Jackson before I can see them trading DeForest Buckner. Chris Ballard loves DeForest Buckner. Everybody loves DeForest Buckner in that building. They view him as the leader of that defense, the leader of that franchise, and one of the best players in football. And you know, it, the stuff you see on Twitter too, I mean, like I had that one earlier. That guy, he said he's like, I think they'd be able to do it for a third round pick. It's like, come on, come on, man.
Well, it's like when they were talking about us
Like
trading up to one, and it was like, we'll take two ones, two twos, a four next year, Kenny Moore and DeForest Buckner. Are you outside your mind? Like, what is it? Are we drafting John Elway?
Yeah, Chris Ballard's never doing that.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
we're gonna jump on this one. Keon Little, thank you, man. $4.99. Should we move off Shaq's contract after this year? I'm always going to jump to the questions. If y'all pay it, I'm going to make sure we talk about it. So, should we move off Shaq's contract after this year? What says Landon?
I mean, just depends on the health. I mean, that's the main factor in all of this is if he comes out and he's Shaquille Leonard and he's the guy that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 seasons, then no, I mean he's one of the best players in football. He creates so many turnovers, so many game-changing plays, probably one of the biggest game changers in the National Football League. But then you add on top of that, the injury. So if he comes out, looks like he's hobbled, it's just not working out, he's just not able to get right, then yeah, I mean, that's a conversation that you would seriously have to sit down and have.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people. There was a comment earlier up in the top, and I wish I could find it, but y'all have been flooding the chat, and I love it. He's out one season, everyone forgets who he is.
Yeah.
And you can look at, we had this conversation, right? And, you've got this in here too. People bringing up how valuable is Leonard when Franklin broke the tackle record. Franklin did seem to fit what Bradley wanted. If you're Gus Bradley and you have Shaq coming back, right? We've talked about this. He is one of the most talented players on your team. I had an argument with a guy the other day going back to when he went Defensive Rookie of the Year and arguing about that and he was like, it's actually my brother. And he brought up, he was like, oh, he had like 2 good years. I was like, he's had 4 consecutive seasons of 100 plus tackles, 120 plus tackles. So, whatever.
Yeah, well, it's the turnovers on top of that. I mean, nobody gets the ball back like Shaquille Leonard gets the ball back. And that is the single most valuable play you can make as a defensive player. And I mean, even last year, what he played 2-3 games, his first game back from injury,
turnover.
Turnover. I mean, the guy's just always around the ball. So,
well, and you had a lot of people saying too, like he seemed to be trying, and you're judging off of 2 or 3 games, right? He seemed to be trying to find his fit in Gus Bradley. I will say this. I liked the defense. I like what they did. If you're Gus Bradley, you better find a way to get him on the field and put him in the position he needs to be. I know he fits better with what Eberflus did, but he's on your team and he's when healthy, top 3 linebacker in the NFL.
Oh, for
so,
sure.
I mean, find a way to utilize his talent and find a position for him where he can thrive on there. You can't not have him on the field.
Yeah, and like they play different roles too. Like Zaire Franklin and him, I know they both play linebacker, but there's different forms of linebackers, and so they don't even play the same role on the field. So, really, like what you're more likely to see is if he's healthy and back, he kind of takes over the same role that Okereke played, as opposed to taking over for Zaire. So, with him being back and then, EJ Speed being there as a rotational linebacker, I mean, I still think that's just one of the best linebacker trios in football. And he's one of the best, not just linebacker, he's one of the best defensive players in football. So, I mean, like I said, it's all predicated on the injury though. Like if he's out there, he's can't get right, he's struggling. I mean, it's tough. Like that's a conversation you are going to have, and they might be able to look at moving off of that deal. But as of right now, if he's going to be if he is healthy and things seem to be trending towards that. Everything we've heard, the surgery took really well. It fixed the issues. Now it's just about gaining that strength back, getting back to the level that he was before the surgery happened, back whenever really his rookie year, whenever he was last fully healthy. And that's another thing that's incredible is the fact that he played on that injury as well as he did. I mean, you're talking about an all-pro linebacker
Mhm.
that playing hobbled. So if he can get back to being 100% healthy, and it's football, nobody's ever going to be 100%, but I mean, you're talking about 95, 99% healthy. I mean, he can be even better than what we've seen. So, yeah, I mean, how do we know he's going to be 100% healthy? You don't. That's the risk that you take. But it's football. This you could say that about any player. You know, we could go out next week and somebody could have an accident training and be out for the season. We saw it with Rigoberto Sanchez.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just such a physical game, and that's part of the game. Like every player is going to deal with injuries, some more serious than others, but every single football player is going to deal with an injury at some point in the NFL. So, you basically just have to trust the doctors, trust his work ethic to get back. Obviously, we know the type of guy he is.
Mhm.
Nobody's going to outwork Shaquille Leonard. Nobody cares about Shaquille Leonard, or not cares about him, but nobody cares about football as much as Shaquille Leonard does. I mean, this is his life. So, yeah, you just have to, listen to the doctors, listen to him, make sure his body's right, and then we'll kind of see where it goes from there. But like I said, things seem to be trending up. The surgery fixed the issues. Now it's just about gaining the strength back into that, calf ankle area.
Yeah, and I think as we read it too, as I see the comments like Keon bringing up 19.7 million this year, just hoping that he's back healthy. Hope he's healthy. I think everyone's sitting that way, and I think there's a lot of to quote my boy Zach. There's a lot of scar tissue with Colts fans in regards to Andrew Luck
Yes.
and not knowing, and it was so much unknown with Shaq. Like you felt like he was coming back, then he wasn't coming back, and then he came back, then he broke his nose, concussion, and all this stuff. And was it an ankle and then it was a back? So I think there's a lot of scar tissue with it. But that 19.7 that Keon mentions, if he plays the way he did, it's a steal, right? Like you're
Yeah.
not concerned about the money when he's playing at his all pro level. And we won't know that till next season. You won't know it in OTAs. You won't know it in training camp. You'll know he looks like he's got a step, but you really won't know till he hits the field week 1. That's the thing. And we'll see. And I think you summarized it really well. I think if you see him struggling, if you see him hobbled and not looking like it, then maybe then you start to get a little bit more worried. But man, there's no point in worrying in March about something we have no clue until September, or
Yeah.
August, somewhere around
And
there.
and I'll tell you, man, if I had a list of players on the Colts that I would not bet against,
Mhm.
he would be probably at the very top of that list.
Oh, just tweet out that you think he's not going to be back because I'm sure he'll like it.
I
Snapshot it, and you'll
I
see it
love that,
later.
by the way. I love that, by the way.
He does it all like he does that. So okay, so we're gonna go a little bit longer because I can't have you on here and not us not discuss the rookie quarterbacks, right? The ones that we all know, like we've said, me and you and Zach, we've said on roundtables before when we had kind of our choice of everybody.
Mhm.
We're gonna say Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are gone. We're sitting and we stay at 4 and nobody jumps you, right? So let's say it runs chalk, right? They take Will Anderson or whoever they're going to take at 3 with Arizona, and we're sitting at 4, and you're staring down Anthony Richardson or you're staring down Will Levis. Who is Landon turning the card in if he's the Colts GM on who he would want?
Yeah, well, I think if anybody follows me on Twitter, you know the answer to this question. It's Anthony Richardson. You know, I've just been enamored with not only, we can talk for days about the talent he possesses. I mean, the guy is, proven now the most athletic quarterback in NFL, draft history. There's never been a quarterback as athletic as Anthony Richardson is. To have his combination of strength, speed, size, I mean, it's all there. But what really sells me on him are the little things he does, and it's the mentality that he possesses, the work ethic and excuse me, the ability to improve. Because you got to remember, he hasn't had a quarterback coach at Florida. Florida did not have a quarterback coach on that team. And he got thrown into a new offense that he just learned with a new head coach. He had never started, his first 13 games. And you could see the progression as the year went on. You could even see it sometimes in the same game where he would make a mistake and, he would miss a couple throws. They would go back to that concept later in the game and he would hit it. And you could see it happen in real time, the improvement. And the guy that he was early on in the season was not the same guy that he was later in the season. And to me, that shows, one, his commitment, his ability to take whatever coaching he did receive and apply it to the field. And being able to be coachable, but being able to apply it to the field are two way different things. And the fact that he could do that, recognize that mistake and correct it, like I said, sometime even within the same game, that really bodes well. And then some of the things he does as far as manipulation of defenders with his eyes, his ability to shrug guys off, the way that he can manipulate defenses with his legs as well. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that I think if you get him with the right coaching staff and the right program and you allow him to really blossom into who I think he can be, he's the only guy in this class to me that has the upside of, we can compete with Patrick Mahomes. We can compete with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. He has that kind of ability if you are able to tap into it. I like Will Levis as well. I think Will Levis is another like really strong leader, obviously physically gifted, powerful arm, really smart kid. But I just don't know if he has that type of ceiling to where you're able to throw him out there at his peak. Like if all these guys hit their peak, I still don't know if he's going to be able to compete with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and those type of guys. Whereas if Anthony Richardson hits his peak, you could have an MVP quarterback. And to me, that's worth the risk.
See, okay, so I'm going to ask you one other one, and then I'm going to give mine, right?
Yeah.
Are you starting him next? Are you playing him next year?
Am I starting him week one? Probably not.
Maybe not week one, but like, would you take like the? I'm not going to go Lamar Jackson. Maybe like the Lamar Jackson rookie year, he came in near the tail end. Maybe even like the Kenny Pickett, he came in about halfway. Like, are you picking Mahomes and sitting him the entire year?
No, because one of his biggest problems is just that he hasn't played enough football.
Exactly.
And you don't get experience holding a clipboard. You're going to have to get some game action. So, yeah, I would probably handle it very similarly to how Atlanta handled Desmond Ridder last year, where, they have him sit and learn a little while. And then the last 3-4 weeks of the season, you throw him out there, let him get some reps, let him experience the game at an NFL pace. And he knows what he's going up against. And then, the next year, it's just kind of like training wheels are off. Let's go get it. But yeah, I don't think he's a guy that has the set all season long. I mean, I think you want to really nail down his mechanics. And from the moment he's drafted, the moment he hits rookie OTAs, that's going to be the focus is mechanics and playbook. And he has the ability to, with the way he's able to run the football, you can simplify the playbook and allow him to succeed at a level without necessarily being a top tier passer. We've seen it, with Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson. We've seen this, Jalen Hurts even. So we've seen this work previously, and that's kind of where I would probably have him, start the last 4 weeks of the season, but then my main focus would just be getting him up to speed, getting him comfortable in the offense, having him run, some plays, practice sessions and stuff like that. I don't know if I'd throw him out week 1, but I would like to have him get some experience next season.
So this is where I sit, right? I struggle. So I'm going to say two different. I'm going to sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. I'm going to love and adore whoever they pick because he's going to be our quarterback, right?
Right.
And we all have arguments for all these quarterbacks, and they all have holes. Every single one of them have some sort of flaw that you can look at, even up to the top. C.J. Stroud under pressure, right? Bryce Young, his weight. Anthony Richardson, his accuracy. Will Levis, his accuracy and kind of everything else. My biggest struggle is I've watched him. I struggle. I struggle every year with the idea of someone rising so quickly based on stuff that didn't take place on the field. And I know exactly what you're saying. There's a lot of great stuff on the field that he did. I joke, and I joke all the time. I say, you hardly ever inside Colts Twitter see a low light of Anthony Richardson. It's all highlights. And contrast that with you see nothing but low lights about Will Levis. I like Will Levis a lot. He was my number one for a long time until CJ Stroud in the Georgia game. And that I think me and you sat on a round table and all of us were like, I don't want to change because of one game, but damn, that was a great game. And it changed, right? It changes the way you felt about CJ Stroud. My biggest issue with Anthony Richardson, and I believe when push comes to shove, I think he's probably going to be the pick. I do. I think Ballard has enough leash. I think it gives Ballard even more leash, right? Like you've got a guy you really have to develop. I think if anybody can do it, it looks like it's going to be Steichen. I think, yes, he's developed a lot of other quarterbacks, Rivers, Herbert, and Hurts. Only one of those took him to the Super Bowl, and that was Hurts, right? And that's really similar to what Anthony Richardson is. I use the example, and it's a bad example maybe, but I watched every snap of the Florida State game. My family's Florida State boosters. Everyone's heard me talk about this. And I struggle with the idea that he couldn't complete a pass until halfway through the fourth quarter. And I know you rewatch that. It's a lot of drops. There's drops. There's a lot of drops, right?
A lot of drops.
But, and then you see the game against Utah where he looked amazing. It looked like the best player in all of college football. And then the next week he looked horrendous. And I think that's a lot of, like you said, he needs experience. And I couldn't agree more with if you draft him, I'm developing a package for him pretty quickly to be in games, getting some experience to where you're going to you walk this fine line, right? Like you don't want him to turn out like Malik Willis. But Malik Willis wasn't supposed to see the field at all for the Titans this year. Everyone knew that.
They're very different.
And they're very different.
Yeah, like Malik Willis was, as far as like his ability to play from the pocket and make throws from the pocket, to read defenses and manipulate defenders, Malik Willis had almost none of that. And he played at Liberty. Anthony Richardson, to his
played
credit,
against SEC.
Yeah, well, he played in the SEC, but he showed you that ability at some point. And look, when it comes to scouting guys, and this is kind of very similar to the CJ Stroud Georgia game. If you see them do it once, you know they have the ability. Like Anthony Richardson, we've seen him make some incredibly accurate, just dime throws. So you know it's there. Now it's just about how do you get it out consistently from him? That's the main thing. How do you get it consistently? Because if you can tap into that, and I'm not even saying he has to be, 64, 65% passer. If you can get Lamar Jackson won his MVP award, I believe he was at 59% completion percentage. So if you can even get him just around that 60% range, he is just such a game changer with the ability he possesses. And I just think that he's shown enough in games to where he has this ability. And I think even some of the things that don't show up on the stat sheet, his ability to avoid sacks, to avoid pressure. He was one of the least sacked quarterbacks in all of college football last year. His pocket, the way he fills the pocket, the way he manipulates the pocket and, can can get out of that. So those are all things that don't show up on the stat sheet, but they're very, prevalent whenever you put the tape on. So he had some struggles at Florida for sure. Absolutely. The tape is the tape for sure. Like, I mean, you can't erase that. That is the single most important aspect. The tape is the tape, and that's what you have to go off of. But when you watch the tape, you see the ability he has to make accurate throws, to manipulate the pocket, to just make game-changing plays. And that's just stuff that it's a lot easier to get a guy's footwork under control and to get him consistent. Like I said, I don't ever anticipate him being 65, 66% completion percentage. But if you can just, 61, 62, around that range, I mean, he has the ability to just absolutely break games. So, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how I look at it. And I know I saw back there, yeah, we had the Hendon Hooker thing. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, really quickly, we'll touch on this because we're going to wind it down. We've been over an hour. Um, Keon drops it again. Love it. Hey, if you guys want to make sure we do it, even if we extend, do what Keon's doing, man. Trade back, pick up picks, draft Anderson, look at Hooker. I love Hendon Hooker. I really do. And this is if Richardson's gone, right? I love Hendon Hooker. I just don't see that if there's a quarterback, one of these four at 4, I just don't see them trading back. I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see them taking a Will Anderson, although it would be the epitome of a Ballard move. I can't. I personally think I have no inside people. I think there's been a mandate laid down by Jim Irsay to say you are taking a quarterback. And I think he has told Ballard that. And that's why they're scouting so hard at the 4. I don't know if that's actually the case, but I do think there has been something said you are doing it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be just the full on like Jim Irsay's you're taking this player hell or high water, because you can't force the quarterback pick. I mean, you can't. But this is a good class. This is a good class, and if there was a time to take a shot, you don't know when you're going to be picking in the top 4 again. I mean, that's not very often you get this high in the draft. And normally you might be able to do it one time. If you're picking top 4 again, you're probably not the guy making that selection. So yeah, I mean, they're picking a quarterback. So I like all these guys. Even Hendon Hooker, I think he does some nice things. It's so hard to know where he is because of the offense that he played in. It's almost impossible to translate that type of play to the NFL. It's extremely difficult. I mean, we've seen multiple quarterbacks now that come from that type of offense that once they get into the NFL, it's a completely different type of football, and they struggle. And I'm not really worried about the age, just because, if even at his age, say he's 26 when he starts, if you get 8 years of really good quarterback play, I mean, you take it. It's so hard to find that. So yeah, you're happy with it. The age isn't what worries me. It's just the ability to translate his type of play and what he does well into the NFL. Now, does that mean that he can't do it? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because I think he has some really good stuff. He's a mobile guy, stands in the pocket, has a really good arm, makes good decisions, it seems like. So yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a good player, but I just don't think he has the ability, the talent that these top 4 guys do.
Yeah, and I think people miss, to touch on him real quick, who don't follow college football as closely. When we say spread you out, they're lining up their receivers like 3 yards from the out of bounds boundaries. Like they are everywhere. They are so spread out that he's not having to make tight window throws. And like I said, I love Hendon Hooker. Okay, someone paid, so I got to say this, and then we're going to wind it down. Levis. Good. Levis is everything we liked about Wentz without things we hated: inability to lead and confidence. Like I said earlier, I like Levis. I think the people who are in the know, like yourself and others who look at this, they understand he has a lot of talent. I do also think that there's this weird I think there are people that just don't like him. I think I tweeted one time and said, I
Yeah.
think people don't like the fact he ate the banana with the peeling, put mayonnaise in his coffee, and played at Kentucky. I mean, the dude said he had a cannon for an arm and he wanted to show it off, and that was like a huge knock that he said that at the combine. I think there's a lot of unjust criticism, and if he is the pick at 4, if everyone's off and he's the pick, I'm okay with that. I think
For sure.
I've said I think I see him as I try not to comp him to Josh Allen because I think Josh Allen's such a unicorn when it comes to how he is and his development, everything. He reminds me, if you're looking at like what's Steichen, the different quarterbacks, he reminds me a little bit more of Herbert. But he also reminds me, I think I threw out Jay Cutler, the big arm. I can fit it anywhere. Like, I like him. I think you can do a lot worse. I think people poke fun, but do we really? No one knows. No, that's the beauty of the draft, right? Like,
Yeah,
Hendon Hooker could get picked to the second round and end up being the best quarterback in the entire draft.
absolutely. Yeah, and I've always hated the wins comparison in general because they're so different. Like they're just so different from personality, the way they go about their business, the way they even play the game. It's just so different to me. I mean, the only really thing is like he's mobile and has a big arm, and so is Carson Wentz. So I mean, that's pretty much the only comparison between the two. To me, he's a lot. I think like if you hit his ceiling, he's a lot more like a more mobile version of like Matthew Stafford.
Oh, I like that too. I've heard that one too.
So, but on the flip side, he profiles very similarly athletically and the way he played in college to a guy like Blaine Gabbert. So that's
And
kind
that
of like
makes antennas pop up everywhere for everybody.
exactly. So I mean, like this. So that's like your range of outcomes is like, could you have a mobile version of Matthew Stafford? Would that be awesome? Yeah, that'd be pretty sick. But could you also be drafting Blaine Gabbert 4th overall for sure? And but you could do that with it. You could do that with every single one of these quarterbacks.
Well, and that's something we even talked about. Is that Richardson? If you're comparing, like I talked to Drake, and we were talking about it. So I think we can all agree Richardson has the higher ceiling but the lower floor.
Yeah,
Levis might have the lower ceiling but a higher floor. Like it's gonna be in the end who's there and who they take. And I feel like we'd all be lying to ourselves if you don't convince yourself of whoever they pick that's the guy. Like you're gonna be fine. You're gonna maybe moan and groan a little bit that they didn't get your guy, but everyone's gonna be fine because we finally got what we've wanted for the last 6 years, which is a young quarterback to build around. So
yeah, and that's what makes this class so interesting is because there really are like there's really 4 or 5 guys in this class that obviously the top 4 a little bit more, but there's 4 guys for sure that I think in the right situations with the right coaches, and that's what really this is about. I mean, the situations matter. They matter for every player, especially at quarterback. So if you get a guy in the right situation, I mean, we saw it even with Geno Smith, not even a rookie. We saw it with Geno this year. He finally, failed with the Jets, was a bust with the Jets. High 2nd round pick, didn't work out. He goes to, finally, waits his turn and gets another shot in Seattle. The situation, was a lot better for him. And, he's taken that time and credit to the work he put in, but he got put in a better situation. And what happened? He succeeded. He had a really great year. So, I mean, the situations these guys go to are ultimately what's going to make and break them because they're all talented players. They are all really strong, mentally, great leadership skills. They love, great work ethic. All these guys have all of that. So really it's just about where do they go and are those teams able to put them in a position to succeed?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in agreement. It's going to be a fun, we got about a month and a half left till the draft. Man, thank you for coming on. We had a very, someone dropped in there.
PJ Walker.
Where did he end up going?
Chicago.
Well, someone dropped in there, so I just looked it up. Jim Barrett. I don't know who Jim Barrett is, and I don't think it's someone worth looking at, but said he's hearing rumors Minshew to the Colts. I've not seen it anywhere else. Keep your eyes peeled. I'm sure that'll happen if it's going to happen. But, man, so, yeah, thanks for jumping on, man. That was a blast. It was a blast. Thank you guys for participating. We had a couple people come on through Twitch, so that's kind of cool. And at the end, if you guys are still hanging on here, we've got a lot of people still on watching. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you kind of ding that bell. You don't want to miss when we're going live. And while you're at it, you guys, man, make sure you go over to the Blue Stable. Check out what Landon's working on. Go over to their YouTube channel. Check them out too. I'm partial. I know the guys over there really well. I know Landon. I know Mike. I know Marcus. I go back and Destin, Rashad's my boy. For those who've been around long enough, knows Rashad was on this show in the very beginning, man. So Rashad, I still text with. So make sure you guys go over, check him out. And as we get close to the draft, 100% make sure you're doing it. Landon does an amazing job of breaking down. He still has, I will say, you still have, I feel like one of the best Twitter feed ones kind of breaking down. It's Will Levis, and you like breaking down the different prospects. Go make sure you check him out on Twitter. Man, it's been a blast. Thanks for coming on. Everybody, thanks for coming out. As always, you guys, we end these things the same way I always do. I love you. I know Zach loves you out here, and I'm like 99.9% sure Landon loves you too. We'll see you guys next time.